Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A content. It's a podcast. We answer questions technically. We talk about whatever we want pretty consistently. This is season 12, episode 1. We finished off last season with the most season stuff that we've ever done, because previously it was just kind of a joke and a bit. But we did the Season of Lost Challenge characters where we went through all the characters that were missing, and before we finished, they started becoming unmissing.
So that was 10 out of our 11 seasons did not really have any sort of overarching theme. That was the only one. And then
towards the end of it, we also ended up doing tier list for like a couple weeks straight. And so we were done the season, and we were back to seasons that have no rhyme or reason, that are just kind of silly and whatever. Maybe this one will end up with a theme. Maybe if people have ideas or suggestions, you were saying, for a theme, that we would consider it. But the important part about it being a theme is that we either, at the very least, we need something to do in the gameplay, right? Even if we don't talk about it that much.
Right.
But ideally, it would be something that we also talk about with our mouths a little bit. And it would need to last a certain number of episodes to be considered a season. So it's hard to imagine that we're going to figure one out maybe one day.
So in the short term, we're revisiting some of our favorite teams. And this week it's going to be a Flashpoint team. And maybe next week will be too. But it's really an easy grind with the Flashpoint, and it's fun playing. Every time I come back to good team, it is super fun to lean into the things that do well. Flashpoint team, huge damage output from both our specialist and our basic damage dealer. Injustice, the New 52 Wonder Woman Justice League team with the power generation. Any Arkham Knight or any Arkham team with Arkham Knight Batgirl, where we can sort of fight with abandon and almost invite the enemy, the opponent, to knock us out, to trigger her passive. Anyways, so we're sort of going back to that, and we'll figure it out.
So there we go. Our first comment this week comes from Beansman8871. They say, do you think Arkham Origins Deathstroke will be a challenge sometime in the next month, considering all the throwback kind of characters they're throwing in?
All right, so this is the fun I was having with the first two questions. So Beansman, I mean, we make assumptions about how we break it down when there's no punctuation, there's no spacing. B and S man.
Could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so importantly, next month, right? The answer is probably not in the next month, but definitely not, right?
I think there's a good chance. I mean, we've only got 19 Lost Challenge characters left. And if they keep up at the current pace of one Lost Challenge character coming back every 2 weeks, then it's going to be within the next less than 5 months before we've hit every one of them. Then it's a question of whether Deathstroke is one of the early ones or the later ones.
But the next 1 month, right? If it's about 5 months, let's round up to 5.
2 out of 19.
Yeah, it's like a little bit over 20% chance, right?
Yeah. Oh, I'm doing the math wrong. Right, it's every 2 weeks, so it'll actually take
twice as long.
Twice as long. So
almost 10 months.
19, 28, 38. Sorry, it'll take 6 weeks. Sorry, 26 is 6 months. 7, 8, 9 months. It's going to take 9 months.
9 months. Okay,
sorry. My math is totally wrong.
So then it's like an 11% chance in any 1 month period, right?
Right.
The sort of way that's going to happen, it's almost kind of like a Monty Hall problem. It's not exactly, because you don't have an opportunity to switch. You just have to sit and wait, right? Where each one has like an 11% chance, and then the odds of that get shuffled into the next one every time. And distributed out. So we'll see it, right? The chance that there's a good chance that it'll happen in less than 9 months, right? But it could be anywhere. And that is also assuming that they keep the pattern that they've currently gone with.
So you'll reduce the chance by whatever the likelihood of our assumption that they're actually working their way through the list at that rate and keep it up.
Yeah. If they keep the current pattern, could be anywhere in the next 9 months. If they swap it over and are doing a lost one every week, then it cuts down to, anytime in the next 5 months.
But the 5 months was every week,
the chance of it happening in the next 1 month is very low.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, that's good.
Cool.
I mean, it's a perfect question as a transition out of our one sort of
one big question.
One big
But it was the
season.
question that we asked.
Yeah, it was a big season. Yeah, it was.
Our next one comes from Burke's Homemade Memes.
And so this is what I like to do with it. So remember, I mean, just a moment ago, I was saying, like,
you love
bring it
riffing
down.
on the name.
I do, because we make so many assumptions. I mean, we speak English, so clearly we are Anglo-centric with our language stuff, the same way we are Canadian-centric with our currency. And you could read it as Burke's Homemade Memes, because we make assumptions when there's no spacing. It could also be, Burke, show me mad MMS.
But I guess it could be MMS, yeah, like EMES.
Right, because this is the thing I get into with when I play word games, and you're making words on a boggle board, basically. Mm-hmm. My brain wants to always use consonants first. And when I run out of words, I know that one of my strategies is to consciously say, okay, so now I'm going to look for words that begin with vowels.
Yeah.
And then I look for words with double letters, whether double vowels or double consonants. And then I, one is you can go with the flow, but two, if there's always that moment in the game, in a word game, anybody out there who plays word games? Anybody?
I don't know. But so where you swap to like pattern recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. There's that guy who won like Scrabble, like international Scrabble, but he was like an English speaker and he
won
memorized the French dictionary.
Yeah, he won French Scrabble. Yeah.
Where there's like those games ostensibly on a surface level are about language, and they definitely tap into sort of some of the language processing functions in your brain, right? Yeah. In terms of like you're looking at letters and word forms and all that stuff, but it's like kind of a separate skill. Separate from like vocabulary 100%. And everything else, where it's just like it's about speed of like matching, and a lot of that involves, I guess, not actually thinking. The less you think that you have to think, the better it is, and the more you can kind of throw stuff together, you can build like pattern recognition to get words that you're not even sure are words, and a lot of stuff like that. And it's more about speed than kind of anything else.
So
right?
Definitely true with Boggle. Maybe less true with Scrabble. I don't play
Scrabble.
Scrabble.
Scrabble, yeah. Scrabble's a different skill because you only need one word, and it's more of sort of the board points.
Right. So you're maximizing the points, but you also have to have that ability to pull the words out of your tiles and what's on the board. Like, like thinking openly, like thinking sort of in my mind creatively and imaginatively. Yeah, about what would fit with what you've got, because you're not using
in competitive Scrabble. Is there like a time limit on your turns?
This is what I'm saying. I don't know.
There has to be.
I don't know.
Right? Because if there wasn't, then you would really like min max. Like you'd be in your mind palace. Like
I'm sure that there is some sort of thing, but I'd imagine that it's not nearly the same kind of time crunch as Boggle
or like chess.
Yeah, where if you're, there's not the same potential value because there's a limited number of possibilities, and it's sort of being able to see the possibilities and decide. There's only so much you can do, because at some point you either know that it's word or it's not, and you decide to play it or you don't. Yeah. Like Boggle, like most of the time when I play a Boggle board, there's no way I'm getting close to completing all the words. Yeah. Except, my problem now is I've been playing a variation that's 90 seconds. And I was used to playing games that were 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, you have way more of those moments where you feel like, okay, I see nothing. Mm-hmm. I've gone word blind. Yeah.
Well, that's almost like the Name 100 Women challenge, right? I don't think we mentioned that here. We both did it. Yeah. And it was interesting. It was kind of fun. You were actually quite good at it. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not 100% sure what it is in your brain.
Well, I can tell you why. Yeah? I think I know why, because it's the gaming approach. As I got better, I wasn't always good at Boggle, and I'm not great, but I'm pretty good. Yeah. And part of it is letting yourself free associate. What I see, you need to trust that there's enough there that if you don't keep on digging at that one thing that you think you know and you're struggling to, it's at the tip of your tongue. Yeah. Just let it go. That free association is golden. And if you need something to hang your head, so you need a little bit of both. You need the ability to free associate, so that when you think of one name and you think of another name, like with women at least, it was easy to think of celebrities. Mm-hmm. And if you think of one name, like Ursula Le Guin, Ursula Andress, Ursula Vernon, author. Mm-hmm.
We should give a little bit of context. There was this challenge going around recently, and it's literally what it sounds like. It's Name 100 Women. You type them in. I guess you could write them down on a piece of paper, but typing them is much faster. And in like an Excel sheet, it'll also like autofill if you're like typing the same name in. Right. So it'll help you keep yourself honest. And the whole thing is that you name 100 women as fast as you can. They have to be, you have to refer to them. So it doesn't have to be their full name, but it does have to meaningfully, like, correlate to one specific woman. They have to be famous. So, for example, you could name Beyonce, right?
Right.
But you could also name, like, a YouTuber. So I'm trying to think, like, Superwoman, right, is a YouTuber.
Right.
And her
Jenny
real
Lawson.
name, Jenny Nicholson.
No,
but Superwoman is a good example because her real name is Lily Singh, right? But if you look up Superwoman, like, it will come up with one real person. Like, it's a one-to-one, clearly, like, tied. Like, you can say, like, Scary Spice, for example, right? Because there's only one Scary Spice. It is an actual woman, and you are meaningfully referring to one specific person.
And this is where the association comes in. Then you get Sporty Spice, Ginger Spice, Baby Spice.
Yeah, you get all the Spice Girls that you remember.
But this is the kind. But if you get stuck and you can't think of one, trust that there's enough other ones. Just move on. Yeah. And I've learned that from playing Boggle. Like, I've taught myself that skill to say, stop looking and struggling. And just totally free associate, because the point where you start having to think, is this a word in Boggle? Then you've already lost against a higher level player.
So we did this a couple months ago, actually. I have both of our times. If people want to compete, it was actually pretty fun. A bunch of streamers did it. We did it. It's surprisingly compelling, and it's harder than you think it's going to be. I don't know if you found that or if you found it exactly as hard as you thought it was going to be, but there was a bunch of moments where you stall out, and then when you're done, you can name a bunch of women. And I feel like if I did it again, I would
do better.
Definitely do better.
Yeah. But it's the feeling of playing that was exactly the feeling each time I played Boggle online.
Yeah. I had a friend who tried a second time a couple days later and cut her time in like half.
Oh, from what to what?
From 39 minutes and 24 seconds to 19 minutes and 20 seconds.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's huge.
But for context, I took 23 minutes and 8 seconds. I was kind of middle of the pack. I did better than most of my friends, but worse than a couple.
Yeah, in that group.
And like, you did 10 minutes and 25 seconds. So you did less than half the amount of time I took.
Right. I think I was top among your friends group.
Among everybody I know who did it. Yeah, so I was 30, my friend did 39 minutes 24, I did 23:08. I had been beaten. The only person who had beaten me was a friend who had 12 minutes and 59, just under 13 minutes, right?
Right.
A friend did 28 minutes and 10 seconds. A friend who knew they were going to struggle took an hour and 23 minutes.
Wow.
She just got stuck. And then... it ends up being pretty fun. You do have to be willing to sit down for about half an hour and to just think of the name of women. I guess it depends on how good you are at that game. If you're really good, like you are, you I guess you only need to bet about 15 minutes. You know?
But there's, again, it felt exactly like playing a game of Boggle, but just extended. Like, there's those times where you stall out, where you feel like nothing is happening. There's times where you can't even type fast enough to keep up with the ideas that are popping in your head. And I'm almost afraid that I'm going to forget some of them, like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And I think the time to beat is Northern Lion. He is a streamer who did it, because it was kind of a challenge that was being done by streamers, and he did it in like less than 8 minutes, I think, which is just...
Didn't you tell me it was like, it felt, I think you said 6 minutes something? Like something ridiculously small.
Yeah, I forget the exact time. I think it might have been like 6 minutes, like 51 seconds or something like that, where it was like, it feels almost... impossible. Like, for a lot of people, you might not even type that fast necessarily. Because you're doing like full names, because you have to think and then also type them out, right? But it's fun and interesting. So it is interesting the way that, like, game skills, right?
Because you can learn them. They're absolutely teachable and learnable.
Because the sort of joking thing for it was that it was inspired by this one streamer who, I think they said like Obama's wife or whatever, and then people were joking about them being like sexist.
It's not wrong.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah.
So the sort of name 100 women challenge comes out of that, like, oh, could you even name 100 women, right? And it's sort of operationalizing it. And so I think the thing is that most people over a certain age certainly have heard the names of 100 famous women, right? Most people with, I would say, like a memory within like one standard deviation of like the human average, right? Because I know there are people obviously who have like literal like cognitive like conditions, right, that impact their memory. So it's not fair to say like everybody could name 100 women, right? But the majority of people with sort of standard cognition should be able to name 100 women. And how fast you do it, I think, is two things, I guess. It's like how easy it is to bring them. Like, one of the things is if you're into women's sports, I think, and you know like a whole WNBA team. I don't know how many people play on a basketball team, right? But I have to imagine that there's like at least a dozen for free.
There's usually, I guess, I think there's a dozen, and there's typically 9 to 10 that are in the rotation that get to play a lot. So yeah, it should be relative, but I don't know if that's the same with the WNBA as it is for the NBA.
Yeah, but regardless, right? Like there are things that'll make it easier or harder, but I think it's interesting and it's kind of fun, and you could kind of name 100 anything. I guess if you're really into Pokemon, you could like name 100 Pokemon.
I would have trouble now.
You could name 100 athletes, but the Name 100 Women challenge is the right balance of things, right?
Yeah.
Because I think if you make it like name 100 musicians, I think it's a little easier to do musicians actually. Or any like category where there's a lot of people and they're all sort of close to each other cognitively. Because one of the things that you'd run into with the Name 100 Women, or I would at least, is that I would think of, a musical artist, and then think of other musical artists, and then I would think of a random man or something like that, right? Where you start to, it's broad enough and disparate enough that that there's a good chance that you have them. But it's also, harder to draw those really close cognitive connections between people, right? To jump them really fast, and you were better at it.
See, and I wonder if maybe that's part of the strategy. I mean, if people are really stuck like that, because to me, naming 100 musicians feels like it would be harder, because you can do that with women. Like if you're struggling with 100 women, say name 100 women musicians.
Yeah.
And then you move to the next category, and then you can move to name 100 musicians, name 100 women athletes, name 100 women authors, name 100 women actresses.
Well, for me, 2 things would happen to me that would really get me stuck. Well, 3 things, I guess. Sometimes I just felt like my brain was cooking itself, and I just couldn't think of anything. Sometimes I would jump from just random musician to musician, and so I wouldn't end up, like, I would be like, oh, and I'm like, that's just a band. I'm like, there's a woman in that band, but I don't know the name of any of these band members. Right, or I'd be like, or I'd think of a random like male artist name that was like closely associated with the woman that I had just named. And then the third thing that would happen is I get stuck in these loops where I'd be thinking of the same names that I already had written down, and I was having a hard time breaking myself out of that set, where whatever my sort of cognitive process was that was bringing a woman's name to mind generating like, because once you hit like 70, if I was just like, okay, back to the drawing board, I would pull a name and then it would be a name that I'd already written.
Okay, so I had a different problem. So besides stalling out and sometimes not being able to come up with anything, I think drawing blank.
It's very funny for how quickly you did it that you still stalled out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing I would have trouble with is I would come up with names of people that I knew personally.
Yeah.
And then I would have to
count.
Well, I'd have to, again, letting go of it, dropping it, and just moving along. That was sometimes the harder thing. Instead of thinking, is this a famous person, or is this just a person I
they have to be notable, right? They have to have either like a Wikipedia page, or like if they're like a well-known like scientist, like they have to have something, right?
But that's where the free association comes in, because if I'm letting myself reassociate, then I will associate. I'm opening myself to all women names that belong to real people.
Yeah.
Then it's much easier to do that and then to drop the ones that aren't right than it is to try to only free associate with famous women.
Yeah, that's true. And also for some reason, the other thing that ended up being kind of interesting / unfortunate about people's lists is that there's some people's lists that had like a lot of like adult actresses, like adult film actresses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the other thing, I forget why, there was a few names that I thought of, and for whatever reason I was like, that one shouldn't count, where it was like the name of like it was like a pseudonym or something.
Okay.
And I was like, that one doesn't count. And then afterwards I was like, why did I think that? I was just so deep in it that I thought of, there was one, and I don't know if I've ever watched her YouTube videos, but it's like iJustine. And I'm like, I shouldn't say iJustine because she has a name. And I'm like, your name's Justine? But then whatever, I was so deep in the sauce that I just didn't write a couple down. Right. And then afterwards I was like, why did I do that?
And the sooner you let go of them, if you're not sure, the better off you'll be.
Yeah.
Because literally, I mean, 100 is not a big number. There are thousands of women.
You go, oh, what's her name? She was in this movie. She's in Bridesmaids.
You can picture her face.
I can see her face, whatever. You spend time thinking about ones that
Melissa McCarthy, Kristen Wiig, Rose Byrne.
Yeah, but the longer you spend on anybody that you need to think about, that's the problem, is that as soon as you're slowing down, it's the perfect balance of you never want to spend more on any name than you spend on the average.
Yeah. So, I mean, the easier way would have been to associate Melissa, right?
Yeah.
Melissa McCarthy, Melissa Rauch, Melissa Manchester.
Yeah.
And then now I'm stuck. So then I just move on. I would jump to the next queue. Like if you have like a sort of, it's almost like having like a conversation cue cards. Like when you know you're going to be talking to people and you have topics set up so that if anything stalls out, you move on to the next one. Having that in mind actually helps a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there we go.
We never answered Burke's homemade memes or Burke show me mad MMS.
Yeah. Did we even...
We didn't read the question yet.
Anyways, thank you, Burke, for your patience. Burke says, late comment, but if I remember, Silver Green Lantern Regime's power generation is not 25%, it's actually 50%. It's just bugged like how Regime Cyborg power generation is also cracked. I feel if these two would be easy A or S tier if they had gold character stats, even if it's as low as Regime Black Adam 750 stats.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's one of the reasons why early on, before the really great gears, I had Regime Green Lantern on almost every team I wanted to play. So I would set up 2 golds, Regime Green Lantern, and let them rock. And yeah, by one of our definitions last time, I think it was just somebody who does something better than anybody else that can contribute to the team in a way that nobody else can. Absolutely. And we talked about this actually when we had one of our teams saying, because the first set of gears, before we got to the really good legendary stuff, it was easy to make anybody a tank.
Yeah.
And so if Green Lantern's stats were low, you could make up for it by just sticking him in as a tank.
Yeah.
And relying on the rest of the teammates to carry him, and he would just buy you time when you needed to let somebody heal a little bit or build up a bit of power.
Yeah, although tanks are, I think, increasingly less necessary, right, with the meta.
Yeah, and less useful too, I think, because with what we relied on with Green Lantern was that his gears would work all the time. So you can't leave him in if somebody shatters all his gear.
That's true.
You can't leave him in if somebody's bleeding him out with damage over time.
Yeah, and with Tangentone Master's Deathguard, really the thing you want is to swap out and swap back in. You don't like, the building up power or whatever else is not just as relevant anymore.
Oh, and the other thing is when there's more people with unblockable chance, then there's a good chance he's not going to be able to block, because blocking was sort of key to make him a good tank.
That's
when
true.
you've got somebody with really low stats.
Yeah, because then you drop him in and you just hold the block button for the whole time.
I mean, there are other characters that make better tanks, like I think it's Regime Nightwing, is a Silver Nightwing.
Yeah.
But
that reduces basic damage?
Half basic damage. But there's not he doesn't really help out the rest of the team.
That's true. Yeah.
So there's not a great sort of reason to add him to a couple other golds. Yeah. It doesn't contribute much.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Next question/comment comes from David Jaramillo. Jaramillo? I'm not sure.
It sounds like a Hispanic name.
Yeah.
Let us know.
David Jaramillo, I'll say, 2940, and they say, how do you recommend backing up Injustice data? Helium doesn't work on newer devices.
Yeah. I think this is a problem. I first admit we don't know now. Helium was great. The 2 options used to be, if your device was rooted, titanium works great. Yeah. But if you're not rooted, Helium does, but you need to be able to connect your phone to a computer. Mm-hmm. And now they both look like they're gone from the App Store. There
still definitely is a way to back up your phone overall, of like copying and pasting your files like onto a computer, like plugging it in with the USB-C or Lightning cable. If you're on Android, right, using that like file sharing protocol, and then fully backing it up.
You need to figure out which files. Like we're talking about just backing up a specific game, though.
But I don't actually know, and even that, right, that is not like a great, like regular backup thing. That is like a once every while kind of thing. So I'm saying it is theoretically possible. It's just, I don't know, and I guess we haven't done as good a job backing up. One of the reasons, I guess, is we have multiple accounts, right, that all have a lot of stuff in them at this point. So and
we have devices that still have Helium.
Yeah, that's true. So there's a couple different ways that we are insulated, right? Even though we're not playing on the device that have Helium, we could back up when we need to, and also we have a lot less to lose, right? Right. Theoretically. So our sort of backup behavior is probably lapsed a little bit compared to what we were recommending. We also aren't doing glitches nearly as much, right? And not risky glitches. Like the challenge reset is something. You should always be backing stuff up if it matters to you to lose it.
Right.
But relatively speaking, the challenge reset glitch is not like that much more risky than just, I don't know, accidentally dropping your phone or something like that, right? Like,
right.
you know, it just normal wear and tear and living and using your device, right? Has a chance of having it corrupt as well.
So this is the part where we ask you, our audience, to help each other out. We are completely open to suggestions. Comment if you're using a program that is still available, widely available in the Play Store that you would recommend. We'd be happy to try them out and see if they work. And I guess the other thing too is, if you're willing to take a chance, we're not, but if you're willing to take a chance, I'm sure that you could find the APK for both helium and titanium somewhere on the World Wide Web. It's just a question of whether it's a reliable source.
There will be something called that will have a download button, and the question is
It's
if you're
true.
going to get a safe and the actual program that you asked for.
Right.
It is interesting. I know that there are still viruses and stuff like that, but I feel like compared to like earlier internet, I don't see nearly as much like download stuff that has risky things. And I also think that a lot of current like malware and other like negative outcomes from like software, right, is like they'll try to like Bitcoin mine or something like that. But what you'll end up with a lot, I think, is like stealthy Chrome extensions or things like that will serve you ads and inject their ads into your stuff because they want to get something out of you, right? So I think like in aggregate sometimes, if they're not like trying to like they'll be like pop-ups to have you call scams, right? They'll be sort of the start of like a pipeline that is often removable and like annoying and a nuisance, but less like directly like bricking your computer, right?
My dad's phone would like to have a word with you about that.
I don't know how you get so much stuff on it, man.
Well, I'm just saying. So
I don't know. He gets all
downloads.
Of that.
It's one of those things where either he's not willing to admit it, or he just has no clue how it happened. But he downloads all these programs that claim to, and the biggest culprit is that
phone
speed up your
cleaners or
computer.
whatever.
Phone cleaners, speed up your phone, clean up your phone. And the number of pop-up messages when you open those, I mean, this is basically what they are. They don't really do anything else except be pop-up messages.
That's kind
to
of my
scare
point,
you.
right? Like, because even that, they're like, oh, you need to call this number or you're going to get hacked or whatever. Like, those things aren't like, they're both fixable and they don't like destroy your phone, right? They're trying to extract value from you somehow.
Yeah.
And they're more of a nuisance than like an actual like phone killer. Whereas I know like, or at least my perception of like older viruses is that they really, really muck up your stuff in like kind of a permanent way. Or at least there's a higher risk of it.
But they would do different things. But in some ways, I don't know if, I mean, who knows? Because I guess phones, I want to say that phones are simpler than computers, and they might be now compared to current computers. But holy moly, I remember my first Pentium computer.
Yeah.
And I had 1.5 gig hard drive, and I thought, holy crap, this is huge. I'm never gonna fill it. What do I need? This is so indulgent. I have so much space that it is, and I have phones now with more RAM than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just all relative, but and I guess I don't pay attention as much, but I mean, people complain about their phones all the time, and I think maybe the life cycle of a phone is so short that we don't notice as much as people switch from one phone to the next.
Yeah.
And then I guess as your phone gets older, it becomes a less attractive target. Maybe that's.
But I'm also just saying for desktops too. You're the one talking about phones.
Yeah, but phones, I think, are safer.
I also think it is a good point though. A higher proportion of browsing and internet interaction is happening through phones.
Yeah.
So I guess it's harder when you've got all these different types of hardware. I guess a pop-up might be the easiest thing to have work across different sort of scams.
So here's the thing, right?
Or different viruses.
Like you said,
or
it's
whatever.
not just the hardware. There's so many different operating systems, right? The Android ecosystem is so fractured. The appeal of Apple used to be, well, viruses aren't targeted towards Apple devices.
Yeah.
But there's so many Android versions. It's balanced against the fact, though, that phones have such a short life cycle and the operating systems are upgraded so much. Look at Windows. How often is Windows completely upgraded? We're at Windows, what? 11?
Now? Yeah.
And what Android are we at?
I don't
And
know.
cell phones have been around for such a short period of time, so I think it's more work and harder. And by the time your phone gets old enough and it's not taking any more security updates, the number of phones that's running it, right? People just upgrade their phones. I think
we're on like Android 12 or 13 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying.
I remember when they used to have fun, silly names like Lollipop and whatever.
Oh yeah, Oreo.
But it felt like most people kind of didn't know what version of Android they were on, or if they did, that it was just like not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the point we were making with that? I don't remember.
I don't know.
Oh, we were talking about the helium. So yeah, if somebody's using something, let us know. I want to try it. I want to see what's actually available out there, because I am curious now too. Just because we're insulated doesn't mean we don't care. We were the same way we handled glitches.
Yeah, it would be good to have somebody point us towards something, and I think that's a good note to end stuff on.
Yeah.
So to finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to our wonderful patrons on Patreon.
And that would be...
You're scrolling down to
I
make
am
sure you
scrolling down
don't
because we've got a whole list of questions that we saved.
Yeah.
And there were times in the last few years where we
felt like we were going to run out,
so
we had to stockpile them.
So yeah, we save all the questions from every week that are good.
But we've got so used to yammering now. I think we're good at filling space.
Yeah, but it's like that. It's like when you have food insecurity.
Yeah.
And your tendency to hoard food just doesn't go away when you all of a sudden have surfeit and access of food.
We are so good at the yammering and making it longer that we are actually thanking our patrons right now.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's not an issue. We both do it. It's
a big thank you to Michael Devries, Irvin Ruiz, Hoshi 127, Nora Klimek, and Paolo-Cesar-Pablo-Juan, who are supporting us on the credited level. 5x5, who's supporting us on the gratitude level.
There you go. And we'd also like to give a huge thank you to all of you, our loyal listeners / watchers. I say loyal. This might be the only time you've ever gotten to the end of a video, in which case...
So we're just thankful for all our watchers.
Yeah. So we'd like to thank everybody. If you comment, if you engage, however you interact with us.
If you're just watching it.
Even if you're not listening to this right now, we still thank you. I don't know how that works exactly, but...
All right.
So we'll see you next time.
Komoda.